Hey everyone, how's it going? This is the Infatuasian podcast, a show where we look to elevate and amplify the voices of Asian creators and Asian culture. This is Curtis, and on today's episode, we're going to be speaking with someone who's calling in from Melbourne, Australia. He's a self-proclaimed fruit nerd, and by trade, he's a fruitier? How do you say that, Ton?
Fruiterer.
Fruiterer. By day, he's a fruiterer, and he also does TV. He's been on Channel 7 cooking show, Plate of Origin, as well as ABC Every Day in Australia. We are talking to Ton Truong. Hey, Ton, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Curtis?
We're doing well. Thank you for joining us. You just got off work?
I did. Yes, it's midday Australian time, but I know it's nighttime over there. But I'm still good, even though I've just finished work.
What's good in Melbourne these days?
Oh, so many things. Well, firstly, it's autumn, and that means there's a lot of autumnal fruits like chestnuts, persimmons. Citrus is coming on board. We have kiwi fruit. We have plenty of lovely fruits. I like to say that autumn fruits are that little bit extra. And what I mean by that is they've been on the trees for probably 3 months longer than summer fruit. So it just gives them a bit more time to develop more complex flavors. Not that I don't love summer fruit, but yes, autumn fruit is a blessed time of the year.
So it's like low and slow, kind of like barbecue.
That's it.
So do you get your pumpkins this time of year? This kind of when you get your winter melons as well, and your
talking about winter melons. I have tonnage at work right now. Yes, a lot of winter melons. It's almost winter time. But in saying pumpkins, we grow things all year round now. We don't just grow things in season, and with globalization we can import and export, and so for most of us we're very privileged to have fruit and veg all year round, even though most people don't understand that there are seasons where potentially it could be, and most likely is, better eating in those moments.
Yeah, that's true. So in California, we get stuff from South America in the winter, because they're down a little south and they can get their berries and summer fruits in our wintertime.
Curtis, what's your favorite fruit?
Oh, my favorite fruit, if I had to choose one, I'm going to go Asian pear, I think.
Ooh, well, you're speaking my language right now. I love Asian pears, and it's a very, very technical line. We call it nashi in Australia. It's more referring to the Japanese name for Asian pears. But it's a very good choice. Now, I have a second question to ask you. Why do you love Asian pears?
I think it's the combination of the crunch, and it's kind of a mellow sweetness. It's not super intense sweetness, but mostly the texture for me. It's like you're eating a water chestnut, you're eating something so crunchy, and it's like drinking a glass of water at the same time.
Yeah, and you don't get that with regular pears, which, are very firm and crunchy. And when you do leave them to go ripe, they have a lot of flavor and sweetness, but then they're soft, right? So
they're soft.
No, that's a great answer, because a lot of people don't know how to explain why they like certain fruits. Just like most of us, when we go to drink a wine, we're like, I like that one, I don't like that one, but they don't really know how to explain it. And it's the same for fruit and vegetables. And so it's been my mission to help people communicate their likes and dislikes in fruit, because if they can do that, they'll know how to pick one that they like the next time they purchase that fruit. And you've mentioned texture as the most important thing. And the other two things are, say, aroma, like durian, you can smell it. And also flavor, which is what we all taste, which is the actual flavor of the fruit.
Amazing. We're going to learn so much today, guys. So hang tight, everyone. We're going to learn about fruit and veg. I want to introduce one more person. She is kind of hiding in the background right now. It is her first podcast. It is one of my students, another one of my students coming on. It is Sydney. Hey, Sydney, how's it going?
It's going good. I just got off practice as well. And just here, excited to get more opportunities and know more about fruit, because I have my mom loves fruit so much, and I want to like teach her as much as I can.
All right.
Nice.
What is
Nice
your
to meet you.
favorite fruit?
Nice to meet you too. I like dragon fruit. I think like
Oh,
it's a mix between like nostalgia and also the light sweetness. I think it goes really good and it's very refreshing. I remember eating it a lot in my village back in during the summers, and my village grows a lot of dragon fruit, so I would always have like white, pink, yellow sometimes. It was really good, but I heard somewhere where like dragon fruit was like a natural laxative. So it like explain it's like funny to me thinking back on how many times I ate it, no, not knowing that.
And where is the village?
It's in Yunnan. We're a little the closest city is Lanchan, and that's where we usually go to. There wasn't an airport there until very recently, so now it's a lot easier to travel there and see my family, which is really
Fascinating.
enjoyable. Hmm.
very cool. And dragon fruit are just the coolest fruit too, aren't
Yeah,
they?
they are.
They
Like the
just look so
outside
cool.
is beautiful.
Visually, they're stunning, like absolutely stunning. And internally, similar to a kiwi fruit, and just as you explained, very neutral in flavor. Yeah, and it's still having its boom, really. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, we rarely ever even saw it in Western
Yeah,
countries like the United States and Australia, and now it's kind of everywhere.
yeah, yeah. All right, guys, we're going to talk produce today. You know, I always say to myself, if it tastes good, it's probably not good for you, right? You know, like French fries, potato chips, pizza, those kinds of things. But the one exception to that rule is fruit. Would
Yes.
everyone agree with that? Like the one thing that is, you know, that's the one thing that my daughter will eat that is healthy. You know, like she doesn't like greens,
Yes.
she won't like veg, but she'll nosh on fruit. She'll eat fruit any time of the day. You know, apples, oranges. She loves all kinds of fruits. So
Curtis, you mentioned something so profound, profound in the way that it's so obvious, yet not obvious at the same time, where fruits and vegetables don't need to sell themselves, right? They sell
mhm.
themselves because everybody wants to eat healthy. But at the same time, they really fall behind in terms of being the thing that we all want to eat, especially as we have very busy lives that require convenience. And so a lot of my work is a lot of the work which I do is to help people bring that love back, get the love back into fruit and veg. Getting the love back is probably a terrible way to explain it. It's it's discovering a new way to love fruit and veg because in a way, over the last half a century, we have grown fruit and veg in a way that is built around our lives to be convenient, yet it lacks the most important thing, which is most often aroma, texture, and flavor.
Hmm.
And we've done so to ensure that it's sustainable for farmers from a financial point of view, that it aesthetically appears to consumers. It looks beautiful, but not necessarily eats beautifully. And that it keeps for a long time because that allows us to transport it across the world. And to put Sydney's example, dragon fruit, that is a fruit that does not last more than a week, but we've made it last months on end so that we can sell it and eat it across the world. So, it's funny that you mentioned, Curtis, that it's the one fruit that kind of, we all love. Yet when you think about it, as we grow older, we eat fruit and veg far less than, parents would love their kids to eat fruit and veg. And I want people to rediscover that love through giving them the agency and power to pick tasty fruits and vegetables that are moorish, that you would eat it over and over and over again. And I feel as though that experience of a wonderful piece of fruit, a nostalgic piece of fruit, like the dragon fruit that you had in Yunnan, is very far and few between in our modern time.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, he's on a mission, everyone. So we're gonna get to that. We're gonna talk fruit for an hour here. This is gonna be great. All right. So real quick, Thanh, can you tell us what a fruiterer does. like obviously I don't use that word very often, but what does a fruiterer do?
I'm going to give you a history lesson in 30 seconds. So hundreds of years ago, we used to have a lot of fruiterers whose sole purpose was to sell fruit. Now, even probably before that, most of our connection to fruit and veg was through farmers or farmers markets. And as we've, developed supermarkets and shopped in different ways, the term fruiterer almost no longer exists because we predominantly get all of our food from the supermarkets or from hospitality restaurants. And so it's really an old English term for somebody who specializes in the field of fruit, who sells fruit. And that's actually what I do for a living. Now, my alias or the term fruit nerd was given to me. I was donned the name by my friends because of my enthusiasm and passion for fruit and vegetables. And it's really a platform for me to be larger than life, larger than what somebody would understand or really see as somebody who just sells fruit. So I listened to your podcast with Lan, and, she talked about how, with a lot of migrant families, they use their hands when they got here, and they wanted their children to use their minds to, make a living. And as a fruiterer, I'm touching fruit 100 times a day. I'm moving boxes. It's very laborious and it's very honorable work. And I, in a way, wanted to show my parents that what they did was very honorable work, and that what they do is extremely specialized, is extremely knowledgeable. And, social media and our new age has given me a fortunate platform to do so, because I still think that there is so much value that, fruiterers, people who sell seafood, people who sell meat, that we can offer, because we are so disconnected from our food these days. And I think that the pandemic really showed that people have a very strong connection to food, and that many people want to reconnect those dots.
Yeah. So you're working in a wholesale business that receives fruit from all over the world, or are you mostly Australian stuff? Or
yeah, so my father first started a small fruit store over 3 decades ago, and then all of my uncles and aunties started fruit stores. Eventually, my dad sold and went into the wholesale and distribution market, and as you rightly put, we now distribute fruit and veg from all around the world in Australia. And we do send fruit across the world too, but I would say predominantly in Australia to all the states. And we specialize in Asian fruit and vegetables.
Oh, wow. And tapping into your roots a little bit, you are Vietnamese?
Yes, I'm Vietnamese Chinese, and I am digital. But predominantly Vietnamese Chinese. Yeah. As in, I speak Vietnamese and Chinese.
Mandarin or Cantonese?
I speak Mandarin. I understand a bit of Cantonese, but I majored in languages. So, Vietnamese, Chinese, and Japanese.
Oh, wow. I speak Japanese too.
Oh.
So I've seen you on TV a little bit. I mean, not live, but I see you on YouTube, and everyone out there can find Thanh as well. If you just put Fruit Nerd in YouTube, he'll pop up on ABC Australia, and that is what you do. A lot of your videos are how to pick fruit and how to store fruit and things like that. Where did that come from? Did Plate of Origin come first, and then you started doing those videos, or was it the other way around?
I mean, it's a classic creator's story where, I've been creating videos for years and no one watched me. And I guess, Plate of Origin did help. It was kind of like a start of something. Nothing really came of it besides a few small opportunities, which became other opportunities, which became ABC every day. And I've been making kind of educational videos for 7-8 years, and kind of went nowhere. And by the time ABC had asked me to make a video, I kind of figured out all the things that went wrong. And a lot of it was actually education, because in our day and age, we know that you can't even keep someone engaged for more than 0.7 seconds on TikTok before they're flicking up, right?
Yeah.
So I learned those lessons the hard way. And ABC also helped me hone in on what was most important to somebody about an avocado. And I never realized that, you know, of the 50 things I know about avocados, because don't get me wrong, I bought $100 million of avocados before,
Right.
like literally, quite literally, that only really 2 things resonate with people out of 50 things. And so I think really trying to capture one's imagination of what is most important or what the pain point is in fruit and vegetables. If they just learn one thing and they take that away, then that's all that's important for me. Just engaging them with fruits and vegetables for a moment of their time. And that's really hard in our very, very competingly busy and distracting lives.
Yeah, no, trust me, I hear you. I'm a high school teacher by day, so keeping keeping people's attention.
You know,
that's what I do, man.
And that's right, Curtis. You know, right? And I know so much, and I would love to teach people so much. But that's really something, you know, that you'd sit at a university or at college in a room where you're kind of teaching people, or what you do in a classroom. And on social media and on the internet, you know, unless you're on a certain platform like YouTube and you're doing long form, you're really trying to catch people's imagination for a few moments.
Yeah.
Have them take away something that they can hold with them. Otherwise, you're going to be forgotten, just like every other video which you saw only 45 seconds ago.
You're right. Well, let's take a step back. Can we talk a little a little plate of origin? I never saw the show, you know, because over here in the States we never saw it, but it sounded like a lot of fun, and it sounded like they were trying to tie it in with the Olympics a little bit in 2020. You know, we know about 2020, but there were 10 teams representing different countries, and so you and your friend Duncan represented Team Vietnam, and so it's a cooking competition. And you went head to head versus different countries, right? And the first couple rounds was you versus one other country, and you cooked a dish, and the judges picked you the first couple rounds, yeah?
Well, we actually lost the first round to Team Africa. And yeah, that kind of sent us in a spot. I was so determined to stay on. But you know what? It was actually extremely hard. The show was so hard. It was meant to be a really long series, and it was cut short because of the pandemic. Right. We actually went into lockdown, and some of the contestants were considered close contacts. And I don't know if you know about Australia, but we were in a full lockdown across the entire country. You weren't messing around, yeah. No. And yeah, we couldn't actually film, you know, and so we were basically locked up in a hotel. And then in a way it helped us, because for a lot of the other teams, they had very rigid mindsets on what they were going to cook. And then when ingredients started to become scarce, like flour, I don't know if you had a flour shortage in America, but we did in Australia, right? Mm-hmm. You know, there was rationing of flour. I mean, you could never imagine that. And and that kind of worked to our benefit, because, you know, a lot of the ingredients that were hard to source, we were very flexible. And Duncan is a very good cook, and we worked really well as a team, because he really knows his savory. He really knows his meats. He does very good Vietnamese braised meats, and I do very good at garnishes and fruits and vegetables and keeping it fresh. Yeah. So we were a good duo, and it's basically a similar MasterChef type of show. Sure. Look, it was difficult, and I'm really glad that we did it. I'm really glad that we represented Team Vietnam. We came second in the end. Yeah. But I managed to cook some of the dishes that are really true to my heart and represent my heritage. And, you know, when I was younger, the only space where you saw Asian representation on TV was in cooking, and it was only on MasterChef. And is that similar in the States in a way? Yeah,
I think for a long time, you know, a little bit of Disney here and there. You know, you got the Mulans, you got, you know, Zach and Cody, Sweet Life. You know, you got a little bit of Asian rep here and there. But yeah, it was pretty dry here too. But yeah, cooking shows a little bit more, but even not a ton. even though America has people like I'm fifth generation, so you have people who've been here for 170 years, but it's still not, we're seeing a lot more now, like a lot more, which is great.
And that's fantastic. And I'm so glad that it's happened in our lifetime. But yeah, so I went on, as a fruiterer, I took it upon myself to learn all of the herbs that we sold at our shop, because I felt as though if I hadn't used it and if I didn't know how to use it myself, then why am I selling this product? Why am I selling galangal, ginger, lemongrass, lime leaves, Thai basil? If I don't, I might know what it looks like and what it's good, but like when it's really, really fresh. But if I don't know how to process it and cook it, then I don't really know how to assist other fruiterers when I'm selling the product to them. Who's living in your area? What types of foods do they cook? And I wanted to add that another string to my bow in terms of really understanding that produce that I cook. So I started to learn all of my mum's dishes, which is all the Vietnamese cooking comes from. And that's how I got onto the show. But in essence, I really wanted to highlight the Asian vegetables, which I never saw on TV because they were, could you say, not to the liking of the judges. So in a redemption case, if you will, I cooked a dish on the audition of MasterChef, the top 100, which was a bittermelon dish. And the producers did not like it at all. And it was my mum's dish, and they just didn't understand it. It was an ignorant, they didn't understand it. But I cooked it on the final of Plate of Origin, and it received perfect marks, 10 out of 10. And there was kind of redemption because it was just the wrong timing, right? And just like Asian representation in America, it was the wrong timing. That was like 5 or 6 years ago now. And Australian TV just wasn't ready for it yet, I think. And it's taken this representation movement for people to start to want to even accept flavors like bitterness. And I'm really proud of those kinds of moments. And I hope that, as an Asian Australian, but really just, a proud Asian, I hope to champion those fruits like durian, which are often seen as disgusting or, they smell, when really the description of it really is aromatic. It's really fragrant. And everyone who loves durian will say that. But because food journalism has always been controlled by traditional white-led companies, that to their taste, they just don't understand the fruit. And nobody who's actually loved it has been given the opportunity to explain it. I feel as though, there is a form of food racism, which I want to right that wrong. And, it really requires somebody who understands food journalism, who really understands how to explain the flavors, the textures, the aromas, and to champion it so that, Americans and Australians and Europeans will try these fruits that we love.
Yeah.
And I always liken it to French cheese, to blue cheese.
Right.
You'll never see a publication where it's being given the sign disgusting. It might be too strong of an aroma or, but never in a way of disgusting or, smells like feet or something like that, in that ilk.
Yeah, they might say it's an acquired taste.
Acquired taste, yes.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty powerful. Like I'd never, we talk about othering, right? We talk about how you other someone, but I've never heard it applied to fruit before. Yeah, it's totally true though. Sometimes we other cuisines and just say that's not for me because it's just not from my area or something. Yeah.
And, you asked me about Plate of Origin and I learned so much, the show's obviously having to be dramatized and, made in a way to entertain. But some of the conversations that we had with a lot of the other contestants was just so beautiful. And I'm so disappointed that a lot of it didn't go to air, especially the ones with Team Africa, how they cook really tough meats and that's how they ate it. And we all didn't understand. We thought this was meat cooked wrong and, having to eat with your hands. all these really beautiful things that we definitely take for granted and we just don't understand. But yeah, no, fruits is very much has been in the limelight, and certainly during the pandemic. The New York Times wrote an article about how rambutan looked like COVID, and that's just things like that don't really, they don't help stop Asian hate and see these countries and the produce that they grow in a positive way. Even though I'm sure many Americans and Australians love traveling to Asia and eating their food, there's still a lot to say about how journalism can play an important role in the positive influence of how our cultures are seen.
Powerful stuff. I love your content. I love listening to you explain and teach. You're a really good teacher. And so everyone should go on Instagram and find Fruit Nerd, @FruitNerd. And you can see Tan and some of his explanations on YouTube. You can find him on ABC Australia every day. And so let's talk a little fruit. How about this? How about I'll give you a fruit, and you tell me how to pick the best one of them. Does that sound like something right up your alley? Let's go. Okay. And I saw a video. I saw a video on this. All right. How about apples? How do you choose the best apple?
Yeah, interesting question. So a lot of people don't know apples are stored for a year, or can be stored for an entire year, even though they actually are only picked in a 2-week window. So freshness is a very subjective word, you could say. But if you love the Fuji apple, the easiest way to pick the Fuji apple, which is one of my amazing tips, is the bottom where the flowering blossom end is, not where the stem is. That area should be very flat, because the final stage of a fruit maturing on the tree, or the Fuji apple, is that it expands sideways. And when it expands sideways, it flattens the base. So it doesn't look like kind of a ridge or an upside down mountain. Now, it's only relevant for the Fuji apple. Now, what I can say is that when you've picked a fruit that's ripened on a tree compared to one that's slowly ripened, becomes sweeter after you've picked it, it's not just sweeter, but it has more complex flavors. And what I mean by that is it's got a more developed aroma. So when you bite into an apple or any fruit, you'll get the flavors which you get, which is kind of like sweetness, sourness, bitterness, astringency, tartness. But the aroma is the smell that you get from the skin. And that aroma is much more pronounced in a mature fruit, not just an apple, any fruit. But what I can say for just picking fruits, apples in general, is put it in your hand and give it a light squeeze, and you can tell if it's been stored for too long or left out in the shelf for too long, because it'll be a little bit soft. And most apples are quite firm, and especially because they're stored in the fridge, they're predominantly stored to hold texture. And just like how you love eating a nashi, you want that really crispy bite when you bite into an apple or a pear. And even if just, half a centimeter, what would you call it? You guys are still doing imperial, not metric. So what would that be? A quarter inch, right? Just that first quarter of an inch when you bite into an apple. That's the crispy part and the firmness that you want to get. So if you're finding that it's a little bit squishy, avoid it. And you'll definitely know when apples aren't good, because it's usually, stored for 9, 10, 11, 12 months. And you definitely notice that it's not as good as when it's in the first 6 months. But I must say, within the first 6 to 9 months, you almost can't notice that the apple has lost much in terms of texture and flavor.
So we pick ours here on the West Coast of America. We pick ours, October? Is that kind of our apple picking?
Correct. Yeah. October, November, September, October, November, October and November, depending on the variety. So every variety has a different window, and the spacing out is about 2 months.
So now it's May. So I'm eating an apple. So if I go to the store and buy an apple from Washington, I'm eating an apple that's been sitting in a warehouse for 5 months, 6 months?
8 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
8 months. That's right. And do you guys in California get any apples from South America, like Chile or?
Probably, yeah. I think we do.
All right. So when those apples start to come in, that's the time when you know that the local American apples are starting to really lose their ability to shine.
Wow. Okay. All right. Wow. That's fascinating. I guess they can't just ripen at different times. It's just nature is what it is, and they just try to find a way to get it to you all year long.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Apples, even before apples were stored for a year, you could store them in your fridge for at least a month. Like a fresh apple will store for a very, very long time. And prior to refrigeration, they used to store them underneath the ground where it was quite cool, like in a wine cellar. And it would keep for 3 to 4 months, especially given the apples weren't as sweet as they are today. So they do last much longer.
Wow.
So, yeah.
All right. Amazing. All right. Let's move on to my daughter's favorite. It is the pineapple. What's the best way to choose a pineapple that's going to just make us happy when we bite into that?
Yeah. No, pineapple's a really good one. Now, there are different types of pineapples. There are ones that with a really jagged leaves at the top. Do you know those ones? And ones that are really smooth, which are kind of like bunny's ears. And with smooth pineapples, one of the major telling points where a pineapple has reached late maturity is that the eyes, which are the little berries or the little singular segments on the pineapple skin, they really flatten out. And it's a similar case when an apple grows and when a pineapple grows, it really widens out and it no longer becomes spiny or mountainous. And so when you kind of, and that's why it's called a smooth pineapple. When you run your hand along the pineapple, if it's very smooth, then it's going to be almost certainly a very, very sweet pineapple. Now, there are other tips that you can use. Some of them are sun-kissed, and I'm sure you would have seen like one side looks very, very orange, whilst the other side is dark green. That side obviously is going to have more sugars. And there is the modern day era has a lot of varietals which are hybrided. And they're called hybrid pineapples because they're basically two apples where they've got the best traits from both. And they've grown them in such a way that it's going to be sweet almost no matter what. And these varieties of pineapples, which, you know, your common brands in America like Dole would sell, are these hybrid varieties which are sub-acid. And sub-acid is they're actually very, very low in acid, which is why they're very sweet. But in terms of the actual sugar content in them, they're exactly the same as other pineapples. So it gives you the notion and feeling, the illusion that it is sweet. But it is sweet and it does taste sweet. So if you're picking a hybrid pineapple, it's almost certain that you'll have a sweet experience. And you'll notice because there'll be some fancy name for the pineapple. It won't just be a ordinary pineapple because it's a what we call in Australia a PBR, plant breeders' rights, which is basically intellectual property. Somebody has to pay royalties to grow that pineapple. Yeah.
Now, I think I heard somewhere that when you're seeing that pineapple, is that pineapple actually a couple years old? They're like, how long does it take to grow when it's on the plant?
Yeah. You know, if anyone ever, the sad thing about our society is that most children have never walked or stepped onto a farm. And so they have this distorted vision and world of how fruit and veg is grown. And in the case of pineapples, we would be aghasted to know that pineapples take 2 years to grow one piece of fruit. And then you'll need to destroy the plant and grow an entire new plant just for one small pineapple. They take 2 years. It's extraordinary. And so, you know, if you were growing one in your home, you wouldn't want to waste that piece of fruit. You wouldn't want to waste even the smallest part of it. And so I think, you know, when you ask the question of how long does a pineapple grow, it's very emotional for me to say, 2 years because, you know, on an apple tree, you've grown the tree and the tree can yield hundreds of pieces of fruit every year, but not a pineapple.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So treasure it, people. When you eat a pineapple, you're eating a piece of treasure. All right. Now you're heading into winter, but we out here in California are heading into summer, and everyone's favorite thing in the summer is to get a big watermelon, cut it up, and share it with 12 of your friends. What is a foolproof way to pick out a watermelon, Todd?
Well, I've got a question for you guys. In the States, do you have cut watermelons sold, or are they predominantly all whole watermelons?
They do have cut ones. Yeah, you can find one, but it's, usually covered in saran wrap, or, you don't know how long it's been there. But yeah, sometimes they have cut ones.
So it depends. In Australia, we're a very unique country where we actually cut most of our watermelons.
Oh.
And most of the watermelons are sold cut. And that's probably because the watermelons are so big that most consumers don't want to buy a full watermelon. So I've got 2 tips for your listeners. So the first one is if you've got a full watermelon and you're buying a full watermelon, well, it's actually somewhat hard to see if it's going to be really sweet, but you can tell if it's going to be bruised. And it's that classic wives' aunties tale of tapping the watermelon. Because a lot of people don't really know what's happening there. They're like, why are you knocking that watermelon? But when you understand the science behind it, it's actually quite obvious. And, if there's a bruise when you tap the watermelon, that bruise, which is holding a lot of moving liquid, is going to absorb all of that sound. But if it wasn't bruised, it would be like a basketball where the sound would just reverberate back at you like a bouncy noise. And a bruised watermelon will sound like a thud, like you're hitting a wall in a way. And so that's a really obvious case for when watermelons are bruised, like they've dropped and, one side isn't very good. The other reason why the sound would be different is if there's a crack in the watermelon. Now, cracks are just purely aesthetic, but they also absorb the sound because there's a hollowness inside the fruit. But if you are buying cut watermelon, it's actually a real giveaway if a fruit is going to be sweet or not, because where the seeds are, that's naturally where fruit is sweet, because fruits are designed for us to eat fruits, eat the seeds, and then poop them out and then grow another tree or another plant, right? That's naturally how nature is. So the area next to the seed is always sweetest for every fruit. And so with seedless watermelons or even seeded watermelons that are cut, you look in that area, and when it's very sweet, the fruit, the watermelon, will start to show almost these light crystals like sugar granules. And that's really the sugar developing. And you can see when one doesn't have it, it's a very bland watermelon. And when one does have it, it's very pronounced that there's a lot of little white dots near where the seed is. So, go for the cut watermelon with very, very tightly wrapped cling wrap to show that it's been wrapped that day. That's my 2 tips for a cut watermelon.
All right. Is it always better to buy local? Like in general, will you try to look at the origins? Like a lot of them have the little stickers now that tell you what country it's coming from. In general, do you try to buy more closer to home than further?
That is a very loaded question, Curtis. And I say so because we all want to support local, but we have to recognize that we do live in a global world. And if you were to ask me, is the best eating fruit local? I would actually honestly most likely say not always. And that's because, have you ever eaten a yubari melon from Japan? They're the most extraordinarily crafted pieces of art, but not only beautifully looking, but beautifully tasting. But in terms of food miles, in terms of, supporting local, and in terms of being in season, sure, local produce generally can be much better. But also, small growers versus large scale growers, they don't have the technology. They're not growing the new varieties that are tasting very sweet, like these sub-acid pineapples. There's a whole range of factors. It's not a very simple question to ask.
Yeah.
What I can say is the topic about local food or local fruit and veg being seasonal, right? Because local fruit and veg is only seasonal. And I actually don't believe in seasonality. It's such a weird thing for a fruiterer to say. It's the it's the selling point. It's the marketing word for the fruit and veg industry being in season or it's seasonal. But actually, within a season, there can be very, very bad times and good times. If you pick fruit very early in the season, the fruit is not sweet. It's being picked too early. And if you pick them really, really late, then yes, often they're really good, but the shelf life is no good, right? And so depending on the time of the season, I like to think that there's this idea of the produce of the moment, and local produce can champion this. Your local markets will know. Your local farmer will know when that fruit is eating best because he's been picking it for the last 2 weeks, and he'll pick it for the next 2 weeks. And he'll just say something like, or she may say something like, Tan, the sun's been out for the last 2 weeks, and these strawberries now are magnificent because it hasn't rained. They're not full of just water. They're not bland, and they've got full color. And that's a time within the season, because the next 3 days it might rain like no tomorrow. And then I tell you what, those strawberries are going to taste no good because they're going to absorb all the water. There's going to be a lot of mold. It's going to be really hard to pick. And so that's why I believe that local produce can be the better option, but not always. So just see produce as alive. Walk into a fruit store and, you know, don't go in with the mindset, I'm going to cook, you know, broccoli pasta. Go in the mindset of, I'm going to see what's looking good on the shelf, what's feeling good. And, you know, if I don't know how to cook it, I'm going to try, or if it's something similar, I can substitute. And I think if we all go in with that view, which is, I'm sure, how our parents used to buy their fruit and veg, then we will be buying in a much more conscious way, which I hope that more people move towards in the future.
Yeah, no, great answer. Because, I mean, Sydney likes her Asian fruit. What are you gonna do? You're not gonna buy local dragon fruit around here, I don't think.
No, right, and actually, Yunnan is famous for their mandarins, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Have you got any questions, Sydney?
What is my second favorite fruit is peaches. So, what is the best way to know like how good a peach is?
Yeah, really great question, Sydney. So peaches are often picked backwards, right? And so by backwards, I mean they're picked early so that they can last transport, they can survive the supply chain. You know, if they're picked in California, they're going to have to reach New York, and they're going to have to reach Japan or wherever they're getting sent to. So they ripen as they're being transported. And when you look at a peach, it might not be giving off an aroma because it's not ripe enough. And what you want to look for is one that smells good, even though it's hard, because by the time it becomes soft, it might be aromatic, but you know that it's not being picked ripe off the tree. So if you pick a peach that is smelling really strong, but is firm, you know that by the time that fruit ripens and becomes soft, it's going to have such a perfume that if you leave it in your car, you're going to almost suffocate because the peach smell is going to be so strong. You're going to feel like you're drinking a peach sake from Japan or something like that. It's going to be so strong. So that's how I'd say that a peach is that's how you pick a peach.
Yeah.
If it's okay, could I ask one more question?
Sure.
You can ask as many as you like.
Recently we had our AP tests. And one of the AP tests for my language class was we had to write an essay about vertical farming. And I was wondering what your opinion was on it.
What's an AP test?
College level classes are called advanced placement classes.
Yeah, sure. So I'm very across it. The world leader is in the Netherlands, Wageningen University, and I've spoken to a lot of people from there. I mean, it's a very broad question that you've asked. I think in terms of being sustainable and having a sustainable future in growing fruit and veg and food in general, vertical farming uses very, very little water. It uses almost 10 times less water than field-grown tomatoes and vegetables. And that's because the water can be recycled. It's because the plants don't evaporate their moisture out of the air. Everything is controlled. whatever nutrients the plant needs.
No pests.
No pests, no pesticides, very little none really. But yes, vertical farming is a really interesting thing because, I mean, in our world, it's all about, we live in a capitalist society that's all about the return on investment, because the investment to go into a vertical farm would be huge. It'd be, to run a warehouse, it would be millions. And so you'd need to make that return on investment. So I'll give you a really good example. In Australia, most tomatoes 30 years ago, or nearly all tomatoes, were grown out in the field. Now more than 50% of all tomatoes are grown in controlled vertical greenhouses. And so the difference between vertical farming, well, it is a form of vertical farming, but vertical farming with sunlight. Now, the reason for that is because it's becoming too hard to farm outside because of the elements, because of the cost of fertilizer, because of the cost of insecticides. And so it's actually more profitable to run them in these facilities than outdoors. Now, that's a really, really complex answer, because the plant needs to be worked for 10 to 11 months of the year. You're going to need to cut tomatoes off that plant for 10 to 11 months of the year to get back the money that you've invested in the greenhouse. Whilst field grown, that plant will only ever yield for you 2 times. So, there's all these different questions about, is it a good investment? Yes. Is it sustainable? Is that good for the soil? Is it nutritious? Does it taste as good as field grown? For one thing, they look perfect in vertical farms because they never have wind damage. They never have rub. And that's what people want. But do they have the intense flavors? No, they don't. And do they last longer? No, they don't, because field grown has to survive the wind, the sun, the heat. And so they grow a very thick skin. Whilst in vertical farming, they have a very thin skin and they don't last very long at all. And it causes much more food waste. So they're very, very complex food system questions. And they're ones that we will only know in time. But all I can say is that nearly everywhere around the world, they are moving towards these more sophisticated systems because they're much easier to control, because they're more aesthetically pleasing fruit and veg. And their flavor is getting better. They're growing different varieties that taste closer towards field grown. And so, it's a very interesting question, and one that I'm across, but one that I don't know the future of.
Sydney, too bad we didn't do this interview before your test.
Yeah.
You would have crushed it.
Thank you for that answer. I was like, I love hearing about other opinions of people who are more sophisticated than me in these topics, because I only had like 5 sources to look through. So I wanted to understand the full scope of it.
Yeah, that's actually one of the most topical things in the industry. I mean, I know this is the podcast, but I could speak for hours on this topic because it's really, it's not just, vertical farming is a term for how most future crops will be grown, whether they're vegetables or whether they're herbs. Most of our herbs will, especially if you live in colder environments. I mean, where you guys live in California, it's quite warm, but in Canada, everything needs to be grown in something of a greenhouse of sort or a vertical farm, because they only really have a crop for 1.5 months of the year because it's so cold. But so that this idea of maintaining food security comes into play as well. So it's a very fascinating question.
Man, I wish we could do hours, Tom. I could do this all night. All right, but I think we're gonna wrap up this portion a little bit. Thanks for your answers. Hopefully everyone out there will check out your videos or your Instagram. You have hundreds and hundreds of tips for us on those accounts. So everybody go check out Fruit Nerd on Instagram or on YouTube. All right, Don, you've survived Sydney's difficult questions, but are you ready for her lightning round?
All right,
let's do it.
First question: if you could have only one fruit for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Cherries.
Really?
Oh.
So, and I'm very, very strict about this in terms of why. and that leads to what I was explaining to Curtis at the very beginning. It's because of this idea which I call sweet umami. Now, a lot of fruits can be sweet, but a lot of fruits can't be extremely sour and sweet at the same time. And cherries can do that for me. They really can be very sour and very sweet at the same time. And when you find a really good cherry, it can be very crisp and crunchy, like the nashi, like the Asian pear experience, which Curtis has. So it can be intense in flavor, and it can have the texture that I love. And there aren't many fruits that have those elements together. One thing that it doesn't have that other fruits like durian has is aroma, but I would forego it because I feel that when you have both the intensity of sour and sweetness and the texture, then you get that idea of sweet umami. Now, umami is something that we're addicted to. We keep eating it. It's like it salivates us. And so a good fruit for me has to be one that you can't physically stop eating. So, if you've ever had that experience where, the dragon fruit is so good or the pear is so good, you just can't stop eating it. You finish the bowl really quickly and you want another bowl. That's when that's my marker of a good fruit. And that's what I call sweet umami. And I feel as though the best cherries mean that I am just devouring, and it looks like blood is on all over my cheeks and his juices are dripping. And anyways, let's go on. Next question. These aren't lightning questions anymore.
No, it's fine. No, we just call it the lightning round, but I love cherries too because it's scalable, right? You can have 2 cherries or 50 cherries. You can throw a whole sack in your lunch or a couple, it's a very scalable fruit too.
All right, next question. What's your favorite color in fruit?
Yeah, color is a very interesting question. It would be something that I would see that's not natural and really intense. Maybe something like a purple dragon fruit or a pink guava, something that almost seems unnatural when you cut it open, and you're like, the intensity and the vibrancy of that palette is like unreal. And it would be one of those kinds of colors.
Yeah, it's like from another planet.
Like Thanos's Kiwano melon that he picked out of the ground in the Endgame movie.
Yeah.
What do you think of the saying, eat the rainbow?
Cool. I think it's a metaphor for eat a diverse, balanced diet, which I think is great. I think excess of anything isn't great. And in my dietetics learnings at college, balance has always been a theory for a well-balanced life. So I think eating the rainbow is a great metaphor for that.
Yeah, no, I tend to dwell on the browns and the yellows, the beige foods. My cousin would always get on me like, "Where's the green? Where's the red? Where's the, it's all brown and yellow and beige."
Yeah,
you gotta mix in some color. You
gotta mix it up.
If you wanted to impress someone, what's the best fruit to give as a gift?
That is an extraordinary question. And the most obvious question for that is strawberries. But I mean, I guess it depends on the situation. I probably wouldn't give anyone a durian just in case it just overwhelms them. It's almost a tester, I guess. But no, look, I think giving a really simple, you know what? I think it doesn't matter what fruit you give them, but as long as you process it with love, like as a mum would, like how my mum peeled pomelo for me. If you peeled somebody a plate of pomelo, oh my God, you'd have my love and adoration forever, because that for me is a marker of somebody took a lot of care and thought in whatever fruit it was. Even if it was an apple, cut up, cut the skin off, cut into quarters, decored,
Love that.
That is the best pickup line that you can that I can give for you, even though I've never actually given that to anybody really besides my family.
But you got it ready to go. That's a good one. That's a good one.
And last question is, what is the most unconventional use of fruit, in your opinion?
fruit, or well, there's a leaf called the butterfly pea, which the Thai community love to use as a dye and put into desserts. And I think it's really cool. And I do sell it, but it's like you can just bottle literally the butterfly pea up and use it as a little dripper now instead of actually using the leaf. And usually I don't say this because there's a flavor that usually the leaves impart, which you want. But I believe that I've tested the fresh versus the bottled, and I can't taste the difference. Maybe somebody in Thailand could, but I think some of the more traditional methods of using fruits and vegetables aren't applicable to today, but a lot of them, still are. Like, for instance, a canned coconut milk versus one that's grated fresh. There's a huge difference between one that's grated fresh versus one that's in the can. But obviously not everybody's going to grate and milk and squeeze out all the cream and oils out of a fresh coconut. But I would say a butterfly pea.
Yeah. I saw a video with you serving people jackfruit pulled pork sandwich. Which I've never tried it, but you got me interested. I think someday I got to find someone who makes it, or are there recipes online? I guess there's probably recipes online, yeah?
Yeah, there are a lot of recipes online, and you can actually use the canned jackfruit, green jackfruit, and it's really, really simple. And my secret ingredient for you is to use liquid smoke, because that way you don't have to smoke the meats and you don't have to smoke the jackfruit in this case.
Yeah.
And you can really appreciate what meat tastes like, because jackfruit is such a neutral vesicle with almost very little flavor, that you realize the barbecue sauce, the smokiness, the salt, the sugar, you can taste all those things, but you can't taste the savory meat. But the texture is almost the same, because jackfruit just has that meaty texture to it. So, you have to try it. I'll have to give you a recipe, okay?
Yeah. Send it over to me. Yeah, that'd be great. All right. Well, thanks, Tan, for playing along with us. And we like to end our interviews by asking our guests who their Infatuasian is. And Infatuasian is anyone in the Asian community that you admire. Could be living or deceased. It could be a stranger. It could be someone that you know. So, Tan Truong, who is your Infatuasian?
You're going to have to give me like a minute to think about this now, because I really don't know.
We'll cut this out.
Who has other people?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, by the way,
so,
I did see that Lan said Jenny Dorsey, and she is amazing.
Yeah. So she picked Jenny Dorsey. So it could be an actress. Yeah, we've had people pick Gemma Chan. A lot of people pick Ali Wong. We've had several Ali Wongs, actually. Who else? Henry Golding has been picked. We've had, someone's grandma or someone's dad is a common one.
Well, I guess for here in Australia, probably the only Asian I saw on TV when I was younger is a Vietnamese chef called Luc Nguyen, and he's very popular in Vietnam. But yeah, he had his own cooking show here in Australia, and he was really the only, standalone host for a TV show that I could see when I was growing up. You really, that's why representation matters, because you don't really, when you're younger, you really look up to, people who look similar to yourselves and are doing interesting things. And I hope that one day people, another fruiterer younger than me might be like, oh, there's actually somebody representing the fruiterers. And
there you go. Yeah.
And actually giving thoughtful advice. So that people can choose better fruit and veg. So it would be Luc Nguyen. He would probably be my infatuation, because I didn't really see anybody else represent anybody that I looked like when I was younger.
Perfect answer. No, love it. Well, today, Tan, you are our Infatuasian. We love hearing you. talk about fruit. And honestly, I really could do this all night long, but
Yeah.
we don't want to put a 3-hour episode out there. But everyone out there, go follow Tan at Fruit Nerd and go find more of his stuff out there. And you got some stuff on tap, so we'll be waiting for that. And go ahead and shoot us anything you want us to promote or anything in the future. We'll shout you out. And hey, Sydney, thanks so much for coming on.
I hope I can come on for another episode, maybe in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm going to give you another last tip, Sydney, and that's for your favorite fruit, which is the dragon fruit. Now, in order to find a good dragon fruit, the ears, which are the leaves, the green leaves that stick out of the dragon fruit, the further they are away from each other, the sweeter the fruit is.
Ooh. Okay, I need to write these down.
Yeah,
next time.
we'll put it on the podcast. Don't worry. All right, Tom. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And everyone out there, you can write to us with your fruit tips or your favorite fruit at infatuasianpodcast@gmail.com. And you can follow us over at The Infatuasian Podcast on Instagram or Facebook. And we'll put all these details in our show notes. And yeah, follow us wherever you get your podcasts. You can leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. The best way for us to spread the word about this podcast is word of mouth. So if you know any fruit nerds out there, if you know any veg or produce lovers out there, make sure you send them the link to this show. I think they'll learn something and they'll enjoy that. So thanks so much for doing that. And I guess on behalf of Tan, Sydney, and myself, we hope that you're all happy, healthy, and safe out there. Until we talk to you again, bye everyone.
Bye.
Take care, guys.